Hi, and welcome to another edition of Horner's Corner. I'm Ray Horner. Appreciate you viewing and listening to the show each and every month as we're almost into the halfway mark of the 2024 season. Already we've interviewed Eric Mansfield, Don Plesquelic, Dave Lieberth, Joey Arrieta, and very excited for this month's sit-down conversation with a gentleman who has really done it politically and been steadfast as an advocate for education and child welfare. And he's right here from the Akron area, has made his mark for all of us in Columbus. And that is Vernon Sykes, who's joining us. He is one of Akron's greats. House of Representatives, State Senator, Akron City Council, and of course, born and raised in the Akron area. Vernon, thanks for making time and joining us on the show this month.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
I guess I always like to start at the beginning, Vernon, when we talk about these Akron's greats, and let's go to you growing up and the passion and the path that led you to where you are today.
Well, I grew up here in Akron, went to Krause and Lane Elementary School, Thornton Junior High, and South High School, and was poor, and really didn't want to be poor anymore. And so when I went to Ohio University, I majored in business administration because I thought that's where the money was. And so I graduated with the bachelor's in business administration and went on to obtain a job working for an economic development program. But it was a nonprofit. It was to assist minority and small businesses. So I kind of got introduced to the service side. Not so much just making a profit. And from there, I was able to switch over to the Summit County Criminal Justice Commission. I worked as a governmental accountant and then got promoted to become a planner. And that's where I got a real exposure to politics. Mm-hmm. The board of the Summit County Criminal Justice Commission was made up of 30 politicians. They all had to be elected officials. So I got exposure to city council members, state representatives, judges, prosecutors, county commissioners, and interacted with them. And through that, through my academic education in business, and I went on and got a master's in economics, and then my public exposure on the service side. I had to make a career decision, and I decided of what did I want to dedicate my life to.
Yeah.
On the profit side, making money for the owners, or on the service side, to provide services to people. And I decided to go with the service side. I also looked at career opportunities. On the business side, you know, the difficulty in trying to matriculate my way up in the corporate America, or work on the public side and start with elections. I can become a member of a board of director, important one, City of Akron, by running for city council. And so I decided to run for city council. I had to resign from my job because of the organization that I worked for received federal funds. It was a violation of the Hatch Act, so I could no longer be employed there. So I quit my job and ran full time for city council and was successful the first go round.
You were, but education, you didn't stop there at Ohio University. I think you went to Ohio University, correct me if I'm wrong, you got some education at Wright State, you got some education at Harvard, and you also got some education at the University of Akron. So you really grabbed a hold of the education game. And
education it was proven to be, you know, my ticket to matriculate and to maximize the opportunity to contribute and to maximize my opportunity for a career. Education has helped me so much. I was kind of raised around a community action agency, and my mother got information about an Upward Bound program, where you would actually live on a college campus during the summer and help you identify finances, grants and loans, scholarships. So I did obtain opportunity to participate in the Upward Bound program in Akron. I did it in Hiram and at Baldwin Wallace College. It gave me a lot of good exposure. I earned and I got an East Ohio Gas scholarship that paid for the tuition and room and board at Ohio University, and I was on my way.
With us this month on Horner's Corner is Vernon Sykes. So you go from Akron City Council, and then you get into the House of Representatives, term limit there, and then you go to become a state senator in Ohio. So I wanted to ask you, your Akron City Council, talk about those years deciding to run and really helping direct the city into a new path, as a matter of fact, and then you end up taking the next steps politically into Columbus to help lead the state in different ways.
Yeah, one of my mentors was Ed Davis, who had been the 3rd Ward council member and then clerk of council. And I sit in consultation with him on a weekly basis to get information, share experiences, give me some insights, share with me history. And because I quit my job, I went into city council and I worked city council. It was a part-time job, but I worked city council as a full-time council member. And that allowed me an opportunity to gain more information about the wherewithal as it relates to City Hall and public policy, and to work on different campaigns too and learn how to win elections as well.
When did you decide to, I always like to say, throw the hat in the arena and go to House of Representatives and State Senate? Because that's a big jump politically, going from City Council, which is in its own right important, but to take your values, your needs, your education, and your ability to lead into Columbus. Was that a difficult decision for you to make? Go back to those times.
It was a difficult decision. I had won twice in Akron City Council, but I worked also in Governor Celeste's campaign for governor. And he had a very, very complete and comprehensive plan in his campaign. And I was one of the minority coordinators, the county minority coordinators for the Celeste campaign. And through that, I learned a lot about state politics and thought that being a state representative could be. The district that we're in, although it wasn't a minority district, it could be a district that I could win. And so I decided to go for it. And Pete Crossland, who was the current state representative, got appointed to the Celeste administration. That left a vacancy. And because I had worked so hard in the campaign, my name was put forward as a good candidate to be appointed to the Ohio House of Representatives. And I was appointed. I appreciate that opportunity.
You took education, you know, from your neighborhood streets in Akron to the education that we talked about, but you've also used that word once you got to Columbus to help stem the tide or turn a little bit of education to make sure these kids and education are on the front burner. Talk about your passion in leading through education in Columbus with reforms and bills and such that you really led the way on.
Education is so important. I received some information, a training session that we were called into at Harvard. Several philanthropic organizations contributed some money to Harvard to do some research on education, particularly early childhood education. And after a couple of years of research, they selected representative education leaders, legislators from 8 states, the states that they thought would be more apt to implement some of the recommendations that they made. And the principal investigators for each of these different areas that they did some research in was head an MD from the medical school and a PhD from the education school at Harvard. And they looked at different aspects of learning, particularly for children. And they said something very profound to me, and that was, from what they learned about education, they would put all of it into early childhood education, all of the money, because it was so important, so critical, because of the opportunity that children have at a really early age to learn a lot more than we can at a later age. And so it was important and significant to put as much on early childhood education as possible. And so it motivated me. They gave me an example. If you take a kid, 3 years old, take them to any country in the world, they will just learn the language. You won't have to teach it to them. They'll learn how to say it. But you take us to a country like Russia, it's some sounds we can't even make. And even if we learn the language, we'll never be able to sound like we're a native of that country. But a child, 3 years old, picks it up instantly. And that as an example of how important it is to invest in children early. And so that really sparked my interest in education, particularly early childhood education.
He's one of Akron's greats. He's Vernon Sykes, and he's our guest this month on Horner's Corner. A lot of us have talked about your leadership through education and certainly being an advocate. What are you most proud of? Maybe something that you led the charge in Columbus as far as education, Vernon?
There's a lot of things. Over the years, a lot of things. Wrongful imprisonment, one of the first bills that I introduced to give some compensation for a person who's been wrongfully imprisoned by the system. Justice should be fought with a double-edged sword. We go after those that are committed the crimes, but if we inadvertently incarcerate somebody, take their freedom away, and it shouldn't have taken place, we should have some kind of consideration. You can't totally compensate them, but some kind of compensation. And now those persons receive about $64,000 a year for every year that they served incarcerated. Reporting crimes against children. I introduced legislation that requires now any professional that deals with children, if they suspect that that child is being harmed in any way, they have a requirement to report it. So if you're a physician, a school teacher, a bus driver, and you see this, that you're required. This is helping us deal with problems and issues with abused children. Legislation dealing with ethics. I introduced legislation to improve ethics law. Open meetings, the open meetings requirement in the legislature right now is a bill that I introduced. Fair housing. At one time we had the strongest fair housing law of any state in the nation because of the amendments I was able to get in the legislature. Fair districts. We had 4 congresspersons last several years ago, and now we have 5. And so that's because of the new fair districts, and it brought a lot of attention to it, and the public's paying a lot of attention to it. We have a new provision that's being proposed now that will probably be on the ballot that will make the districts even fairer. So fair districts is one of the areas that I've worked very hard in, and we've accomplished a lot.
Well, yeah, and he's been a co-chair on the redistricting committee in the state of Ohio, and I wanted to get back to that in a few minutes. I will. Let's also talk in Columbus, a black minority leader in Columbus and getting the word out. Talk about maybe, and I've read a lot about you working bipartisan workers in Columbus to get going on your introductions into bills and such.
Very, very much so. I've worked across the aisle with fair housing. Worked across the aisle with fair districts. I jointly sponsored legislation with Senator Matt Huffman, who's now the president of the Senate, for both the House and Senate Ohio districts as well as the congressional districts. We worked together on that to make those improvements. I have legislation now just introduced dealing with minority businesses, and also legislation that I've already introduced in previous sessions dealing with minority businesses that had joint sponsor Republican sponsor, particularly Kurt Shearing over in Canton. We've worked on joint economic development districts. We work on airport development districts. These are all pieces of legislation that I was able to reach across the aisle and work with Republicans to do what is best for the constituents in the state of Ohio.
Vernon Sykes, he's one of Akron's greats, and he's our guest this month on Horner's Corner. Vernon, you mentioned black minority businesses, and I know in the city of Akron they have legislation now in place about interviewing and getting forward and going with black business owners, small business owners and beyond. Maybe talk about some of the things that you've seen from Columbus on up and right here into Akron, where maybe we've made some steps in the right direction as far as making sure that black business owners get a chance to bid on projects. Their bids are considered as well as white business owners. Talk about that aspect.
A couple of years ago, I conducted some research, did some focus groups in every major metropolitan area around the state where we have a pocket of minority businesses. And to talk to the minority businesses themselves to find out what kind of issues, what were the barriers, and what were the opportunities that were being missed as far as trying to advance minority business opportunities. And so they identified several things. One of the issues had to do with the certification that they go through with the state of Ohio and in various other cities around and units of government around the state. And so we worked with the governor's office and the Department of Development, and we reduced the red tape. We cut it by 50%. And so it makes it easier for that registration process. We also set up a reciprocity that once you obtain a certification with the state, you can use it to provide you certification for any other jurisdiction that provide those kind of opportunities and assistance. So those are the kinds of things that through the research has led us down a path to actually provide assistance where they feel it is needed.
Sounds like we made some good inroads.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Through your leadership and others in the state, you feel much better about that than a decade ago?
Absolutely, absolutely. The Greater Chamber here in the Greater Akron area is also doing a great job with helping us recognize that that is an issue, that we need to work on minority businesses and the minority community to get them involved in the economic development planning and strategy for this community. So Elevate Akron is working very hard and I've worked in tandem with them to try to accomplish some of these objectives.
Let's go back to redistricting. As you mentioned, so many people in the state of politics right now across this country are really paying a close attention to redistricting. And we've heard that term a lot in the state of Ohio in the last decade. People paying much closer attention to this subject than maybe they did before. So talk about your work in redistricting. And you mentioned a couple of times, and you mentioned it a couple of moments ago, fair for everyone. So talk about redistricting from your point of view.
We really should have a system where the people, the electorate, determines who are going to be the representatives to represent their interests. The way that we've configured districts where the majority party has control over the redistricting process, it puts into their hands, and what they do, whether it's Democrat or Republican, who's ever got the majority, has always constructed districts in their favor. And so they're picking, these are the elected officials selecting the representatives of the party that's going to be representing the people, instead of the people picking the representatives. And so we've worked really hard over the years communicating that. And initially, there wasn't a lot of interest or knowledge or information publicly about redistricting. But because we have raised the information level, disseminated a lot more ideas and concepts, and a lot of people, we had those hearings all over the state of Ohio, dealing with redistricting in every major metropolitan area and rural areas around. And it enlightened folks, and people got excited about it, and they approved 2 statewide initiatives, and hopefully we'll have another one here this fall.
Cooperation in redistricting, or has it been pulling teeth in Columbus
It's
to maybe
been
to get some people
very difficult
I bet.
to take control from the majority.
Yes.
And again, I say that's Democrat or Republican. Whoever's in control with the power, they're reluctant to relinquish it at all.
Mm-hmm. Vernon Sykes is with us. He is one of Akron's greats, and he's our guest this month on Horner's Corner. So I want to go back and talk more personally right now. And the Sykes family doesn't just have Vernon in the political arena. How about his wife, Barbara, in the political arena? And how about his daughter, Amelia, in the political arena? So talk about the family growing up and you and Barbara sharing thoughts about politics. And obviously, Amelia was a sponge there in that kitchen as well. So talk about the family and the political arena. It has to be exciting in that Sykes family.
We've got
house.
a family of public servants.
Yeah.
In addition to my wife Barbara and daughter Amelia, our oldest daughter, Stancy, works for the Akron Board of Education. She was a teacher in the classroom, and now she works in the administration in community engagement. And so we've all made a commitment to public service in different ways. And quite frankly, Amelia didn't have any interest in elected politics. She wanted to be involved in planning, public health. And I was able to convince her. She was a student at Kent State, and I was a professor at Kent State.
Did you ever have her in class?
I had her in class. And the class was actually, I was the director of the Columbus program in state issues. And we would take a group of students to live, work, and study with me in Columbus for a semester and learn about public policy making at the state level. And she was able to get into that class and accompany me in the class in Columbus. And she was able to work in an internship in a law firm dealing with public health policy issues. That's where she got acclimated to, and I was able to convince her that being a lawyer kind of is a good idea if you want to be involved in public policy. They're kind of at the top of the food chain in policy arena. And so she was able to go on to graduate school, University of Florida, and get her master's in public health, but also her law degree. It was a joint program. And then she just wanted to work in the public policy area, not necessarily elected position, but I was able to convince her again that policy makers have a lot of influence on what the policies are going to be and what the services are going to be and who's going to be receiving those services and what kind of services. And so she was able to understand and appreciate the need, once I stepped down from term limits from the House, for her to step forward and take the reins.
Vernon, let me ask you this. The political arena right now has probably never been more charged than it is right now, at least in my lifetime. You're here or you're there, and there's a little bit of a middle ground, but the middle ground is a lot thinner than it used to be. You are so calm, relaxed. Every time I've talked to you the last 25 years, I've always appreciated your demeanor and how you've handled certain subject matters. As you, as a veteran political leader, how do you look at the state of politics, not only in Ohio, but across the country right now?
I'm torn. It's a challenge. We're at the crossroads at this particular time in whether we're going to look back and try to keep things the way that they have been, or move forward and be progressive. And that's those that are the haves that want to hold on, want to conserve concepts, ideas, ideologies. They're it's very difficult for them to appreciate change, which might change the balance of power, which might change the distribution of the wealth. And so at a real important, significant crossroads, I'm happy for social media and a lot of advances in your arena for more information is being shared with the public, not just locally and nationally, but internationally of what's going on. And we can all see that it's a challenge to us, our humanity and civility is being challenged, particularly in the political arena.
Are you seeing more of that same sentiment in Columbus maybe than you saw 2 or 3 years ago? Are you encouraged at all? Was more, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, reaching across the table and bipartisan? Is there more of a kinship than there was, say, 4 or 5 years ago?
It's really two things that's going on in Columbus. The regular governance of the administration of state government is working well. The employees are paid well. Their evaluations are coming out real positive. The ideological battle, though, that's going on is divisive. Issues like abortion, and even fair districts, because it takes away power from those that have it and redistributes it. And so most of the legislation that's voted on by the House and Senate have bipartisan support. And that's the regular governance that takes place. We're still moving in the right direction. We're still providing services, building roads and bridges and school, providing education. But on the ideological battle, there's a big gap. And it's difficult right now for us to see what direction we're going to go in.
I want to hit the reset button, go all the way back as we wrap up, how quick it goes, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring you all the way back to Akron, where you started, and you mentioned I was poor, and you grew up in Akron, your life and family from Akron, and here we are in Akron in 2024. We've got a young mayor in place who's now leading Akron. How about Akron now compared to when you saw it through the rubber days and now polymer days and such? How do you look at our city in Akron?
Oh, I think Akron is a wonderful place. It was a wonderful place for my grandfather when he came here to work in the factories at Firestone. A wonderful place for my mother to bring me and my 4 younger sisters here to work initially, and dealing with the Community Action Agency, where she was able to obtain a job, became a director of the Senior Citizens Transportation Program, which became SCAT, was taken over by the Regional Transit Authority, became one of the first African American female supervisors there. So it's been wonderful to my family, my immediate family, and my wife and daughters. Akron is just a wonderful place. I was captain of the wrestling team here at high school. It's a lot of strong traditions. It's becoming more and more diverse. We have more people coming in. The Board of Education is expanding its diversity. We have a lot to be proud of, a lot of history to be proud of, and a lot of future to look forward to.
Agreed. Vernon Sykes has been our guest this month on Horner's Corner, and we appreciate the Senator of taking time to join us on Horner's Corner. There you heard the retrospect look at Columbus politically, Akron growing up, the passion, and his passion being education, child welfare for sure. Vernon, thanks for joining us this month. We appreciate you making time for us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
He is one of Akron's greats, Vernon Sykes on Horner's Corner. I'm Ray Horner.